Who really built power and wealth in Durham? For years, these black women have quietly shaped empires of influence without grabbing headlines. From financial pioneers to community organizers, these women are the real owners of the Black Wall Street. Watch till the end, because you'll be amazed to see who holds the ultimate form of power at number 1. 6. Viola Turner. Before the phrase Black Wall Street became shorthand for lost prosperity, Durham, North Carolina, was already quietly producing its own class of black millionaires. And at the center of that story, often mentioned in footnotes rather than headlines, stood Viola Turner, a woman whose wealth was not inherited, married into, or gifted by circumstance, but engineered by intellect. In a city defined by dynasties and surnames, Turner stood apart as a self-made power broker whose influence flowed from competence rather than pedigree. Viola Turner did not arrive in Durham as an heiress. In 1920, she entered North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company the way many women of her era did as a secretary. NCM was already formidable, the largest black-owned business in America, founded by men like John Merrick and Dr. Aaron Moore. But Turner was not content to type letters and keep schedules. She watched, she listened, and more importantly, she learned. While Durham's black elite focused on stability, mortgages, bonds, brick-and-mortar certainty, Turner's mind drifted elsewhere. Wall Street, numbers in motion. Risk, yes, but calculated risk. Inside NCM, her curiosity became her strategy. Quietly, almost invisibly, she began studying the stock market at a time when few women, and even fewer black women, were allowed to imagine themselves as traders. She studied market trends after work, tracked prices by hand, and developed a sophisticated understanding of volatility that rivaled trained financiers of the era. This became her little project, a phrase that wildly understates its impact. Turner recognized something her male counterparts did not fully embrace, that capital sitting still is capital slowly dying. As others protected wealth, she multiplied it. She began shifting portions of NCM's assets into equities, navigating markets that were volatile, hostile, and unapologetically exclusionary. This was a radical move within a black business culture shaped by caution and survival, where avoiding loss was often valued more than pursuing growth. And in no time, the results began to show. Her trading strategy reportedly generated millions of dollars for North Carolina Mutual, fortifying the company during some of the most turbulent economic periods of the 20th century. This was not speculation, it was stabilization. Turner's decisions helped secure pensions, policies, and paychecks for tens of thousands of black families nationwide. But money was only half the story. The real power move came next. In a corporate culture dominated by men, especially men who already belonged to Durham's ruling families, Viola Turner broke through. She became the first female vice president of North Carolina Mutual and later a board member, forcing open doors that had been sealed shut by both sexism and tradition. This was not symbolic elevation. It was recognition of undeniable value. Turner represented a new kind of black wealth in Durham, not dynastic, not social, not inherited. Hers was earned financial capital, built through mastery of systems designed to exclude her. She did not host salons or preside over charities. She moved markets, and in doing so, she redefined what power looked like for black women in corporate America. Her wealth made her one of the richest black women in Durham, but her influence extended far beyond her bank balance. She proved that black institutions did not need to remain conservative out of fear. They could be bold and survive, thrive even. Turner's legacy is written not in monuments, but in balance sheets, boardrooms, and the continued existence of institutions that might have collapsed without her vision. Today, Viola Turner remains less celebrated than the men whose companies she saved, but history has a way of circling back to the truth. And the truth is simple. Durham's Black Wall Street did not stand on brick alone. It stood on brains, and Viola Turner had one of the sharpest. And speaking of power that does not announce itself loudly, let us turn to a woman whose wealth transformed privilege into purpose. 5. Laida Merrick. Let us talk about old money, but not the flashy kind, not oil wells or railroad tycoons. This is Durham money, quiet, layered, and intergenerational, and no woman embodied that better than Laida Merrick, one of the richest black women Durham ever produced, and perhaps its most influential social architect. Laida Merrick was born into power. She was the daughter of Dr. Aaron Moore, physician, newspaper founder, and co-founder of North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company. That alone placed her inside Durham's ruling circle. But her marriage to Edward Merrick, the son of John Merrick, the other co-founder of NCM, did something rare. It united the two most powerful black families in the city. This was not just a wedding, it was a merger. In modern terms, Laida Merrick sat at the intersection of two corporate dynasties that controlled insurance, banking, real estate, and social life in Black Durham. Few women in America, black or white, entered adulthood with that level of consolidated influence. But Laida was never content to simply inherit influence. She understood something crucial about wealth. Money that is not used is power wasted, and so she deployed hers. Her choices reflected a belief that privilege carried obligation, and that silence without action was a form of neglect. Her most enduring contribution came in 1952 with the founding of the Negro Braille magazine, the first national publication dedicated to the Black blind community. At a time when disability advocacy barely existed and Black disabled Americans were almost entirely invisible, Merrick created a platform that spoke directly to them. She did not just fund the magazine, she edited it personally for 18 years, shaping its voice, its priorities, and its reach. When funding fell short, she paid out of pocket. When distribution stalled, she leveraged her networks. Copies of the magazine traveled far beyond Durham, circulating internationally and quietly establishing her as a national figure in philanthropic publishing. This was wealth in motion, not charity as performance, but charity as infrastructure. Through this work, Merrick turned private wealth into public dignity. Merrick's power also flowed through social capital. She was a member of the Durham chapter of the Links Incorporated, an elite service organization whose membership functioned as a gatekeeping mechanism for Black high society. She was also an honorary member of Delta Sigma Theta, aligning herself with educated Black women shaping policy, culture, and civic life. Through these organizations, Merrick helped decide which causes received funding, which families received support, and which initiatives gained legitimacy. In Durham, influence often moved through invitations, committees, and calendars. Laida Merrick controlled all three. To understand her wealth, one must visualize her lifestyle. Her home reflected security rather than spectacle, from solid furnishings to art with actual meaning and rooms designed for meetings, not admiration. This was a woman who never needed to announce her status because everyone already knew it. Her power was quiet, institutional, and assumed. Like North Carolina Mutual itself, it was designed to endure rather than impress. What made Laida Merrick extraordinary was not just how much she had, but how deliberately she used it. She transformed inherited capital into social systems that outlived her. She understood that philanthropy could be strategic, that culture could be curated, and that influence could be exercised without holding public office. In many ways, she functioned as Durham's unofficial Minister of Social Affairs, ensuring cohesion among its Black elite while extending resources outward to those most often forgotten. Today, her name does not circulate widely outside historical circles, but her fingerprints remain everywhere, in institutions, in organizations, in the idea that Black wealth carries responsibility as well as privilege. Laida Merrick represented a form of dominance that required no titles and no applause, just continuity. And from a woman who ruled Durham through philanthropy and social command, we turn to someone who shaped it through law and executive authority. 4. Elaine O'Neal. Elaine O'Neal is not wealthy in the way people usually imagine. There are no factories, no inheritance, no corporate logos stamped on her legacy. Yet in Durham, North Carolina, few women have ever held more power, and fewer still have converted that power into lasting influence. Elaine O'Neal represents a different category of wealth, the kind that shapes lives, budgets, futures, and the moral direction of an entire city. She grew up in a segregated Durham, in a world that was clear about its limits and unapologetic about enforcing them. Opportunity was not assumed, it was pursued. O'Neal understood early that rules governed everything, and that those who mastered the rules could change outcomes. She saw how law functioned as both a barrier and a tool, capable of harming communities or protecting them depending on who held authority. That insight carried her to North Carolina Central University School of Law, an institution built precisely to train Black legal minds for systems that were never designed for them. NCCU law did more than educate her. It embedded her within a tradition of legal activism and public service that emphasized responsibility over prestige. From there, she entered the courtroom and stayed. As a district court judge, Elaine O'Neal spent years deciding the fate of Durham's youth and families. These were not abstract rulings. They were choices about freedom, rehabilitation, accountability, and mercy. Over time, that responsibility accumulated into something rare: moral wealth. She developed a reputation not just for fairness, but for gravity. When she spoke, people listened because they understood what she had already weighed on the bench. That judicial credibility laid the foundation for her historic rise. Elaine O'Neal became the first African-American woman to serve as Chief District Court Judge in Durham County, and in 2021, she crossed into executive power as the first African-American woman elected mayor of Durham. It was not a symbolic victory. It was a transfer of authority rooted in decades of earned trust. Her election signaled public confidence not only in her leadership, but in her judgment. As mayor, O'Neal inherited a city emerging from crisis. Post-COVID recovery required more than slogans. It required disciplined leadership. Under her administration, Durham implemented a $95 million affordable housing bond, directing resources toward residents long priced out of stability. Housing was not framed as charity, but as infrastructure, a prerequisite for dignity. She also oversaw the city's economic recovery strategy, balancing growth with equity in a city under national scrutiny. Long before becoming mayor, O'Neal chaired the Racial Equity Task Force, and that work followed her into office. Equity under her leadership was not rhetorical. It was procedural, embedded into planning, funding, and accountability. What makes Elaine O'Neal one of the richest Black women in Durham is the scope of what she commands. Budgets, policy, direction, everything. Her signature moves millions of dollars. Her decisions shape neighborhoods. Her leadership influences how justice is administered long after a ruling is issued. She is also part of an unprecedented concentration of municipal power. Alongside City Manager Wanda Page, Police Chief Patrice Andrews, and City Attorney Kimberly Reeberg, O'Neal helped anchor an era where Black women collectively held the levers of Durham governance, not in theory, but in practice. Elaine O'Neal does not dominate the spotlight. She governs with restraint, legal precision, and institutional memory. That discipline reflects her judicial roots. She understands that authority, when used carelessly, erodes itself. Her wealth lies in durability. In a city once defined by exclusion, Elaine O'Neal rose through the law to become its highest executive voice. She did not inherit Durham. She interpreted it, judged it, and ultimately led it. And in doing so, she transformed authority into legacy. From authority that shapes a city's conscience and coffers, our next power broker controls the rules themselves, deciding what Durham can and cannot do. 3. Kimberly Reeberg. If you have attended a Durham City Council meeting, lived under a city ordinance, or benefited from a policy that survived legal challenge, you have already encountered the power of Kimberly Reeberg. You may not know her face, but you live inside her work. In Durham, North Carolina, Kimberly Reeberg is one of the richest Black women not because she accumulates money, but because she controls the rules that decide how money, power, and authority move. At the center of city government, where ambition meets legality, Reeberg serves as the gatekeeper. In 2019, Kimberly Reeberg made history when she was appointed Durham City Attorney, becoming the first African-American woman to hold the position. This was not a symbolic milestone. It was a structural shift in who gets to define what is allowed. The city attorney does not campaign. She does not vote, yet she often wields more influence than elected officials because she determines what the government can and cannot do. In municipal politics, possibility begins and ends with legal interpretation. So while mayors propose and councils debate, the city attorney decides whether action survives the law. Reeberg's role places her at the intersection of power and consequence. She advises on ordinances, contracts, labor negotiations, development agreements, and litigation strategy. Every misstep she prevents saves the city millions. Every loophole she closes protects taxpayer money. This is legal wealth in its purest form, intellectual capital that converts directly into fiscal security. Kim Reeberg's rise was grounded in nearly 2 decades of sustained engagement with local government law, including 14 years spent inside Durham's own city attorney's office, where she served as a senior assistant city attorney and developed an institutional familiarity few could match. Long before her appointment, Reeberg had built a career defined by public service and legal precision. She previously served as an assistant professor of public law and government at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's School of Government, where she helped shape how public officials understood the law. Her experience also included time as an assistant county attorney for Durham County and as assistant general counsel to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. Her academic foundation reflected the same balance of rigor and breadth, combining a Juris Doctor from Duke University School of Law with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from UNC Chapel Hill. Nominated by Senior Assistant City Attorney Sofia Hernandez, Reeberg entered leadership with both credibility and quiet authority. Her influence expanded during a rare concentration of Black female leadership in Durham. Among this group, Reeberg's authority was the least visible and often the most decisive. She did not command crowds or issue press statements. Yet, her power operated in memos, opinions, and quiet warnings delivered behind closed doors. When Durham faced controversial issues, her council determined whether the city could act boldly or needed restraint. When policy goals collided with legal risk, her interpretation shaped the outcome. Kimberly Reeberg also represents a deeper shift in civic power. For generations, Black communities lived under laws written and interpreted without them. As city attorney, Reeberg helps write those laws now. She ensures that legality is not weaponized against equity and that reform is built on defensible ground. Her authority gives permanence to progress. Trust is another form of wealth she commands. Elected officials rely on her judgment, knowing that a single flawed interpretation can undo years of work. In council chambers and executive sessions, her words carry finality, not because she is louder, but because she is precise. Safe to say that precision is her currency. Unlike visible wealth, Reeberg's influence leaves no monument. There is no building with her name on it. Her legacy appears instead in stability, in governance that functions, in a city that advances without collapsing under legal weight. This quiet durability is the hallmark of true institutional power. Kimberly Reeberg does not seek the spotlight. She operates where the spotlight cannot reach, at the foundation, at the margins of every decision, at the gate. And from a woman who controls power flow, we now turn to another woman who redefined wealth itself by transforming art into assets and history into value. 2. Laida Shropshire. Luxury, culture, and the quiet power of taste define Laida Shropshire's empire in Durham, North Carolina. Shropshire is one of the richest black women in Durham because she transformed culture into capital and location into legacy. Her work bridges the gap between art as an object of aesthetic appreciation and art as an asset that carries long-term financial and social significance. At the center of that transformation is the Ella West Gallery, located literally on Parish Street, the historic heart of Black Wall Street. This is not accidental real estate, it is a declaration. By placing a fine art gallery on ground once defined by black finance, Shropshire stitched past and future into a single address. The distinction matters. Ella West Gallery is the only black woman-owned fine art gallery in North Carolina. In a market where galleries determine taste, pricing, and historical importance, exclusivity equals power. Shropshire is not just participating in the art economy, but is actively shaping it. Her advantage comes from a background far outside traditional art circles. Before opening the gallery, Laida Shropshire built a career as a corporate executive at Cisco, working in corporate social responsibility. She learned how institutions think, how money flows, and how narratives are managed at scale. She later served as a trustee for the North Carolina Museum of Art, where she gained first-hand insight into institutional curation, collection development, and the historical hierarchies that determine which artists are recognized and celebrated. These experiences equipped her with a unique skill set that she could translate directly into the gallery world, allowing her to operate with both artistic sensibility and strategic precision. She understood that value in art is not accidental. It is curated, defended, and repeated until markets agree. This is where her wealth becomes visible. Laida Shropshire is not selling insurance policies or office buildings, she is selling blue-chip art, high-value works that appreciate, anchor collections, and correct the historical record. In doing so, she shifts black wealth in Durham from savings to assets. Art, in her hands, becomes a cultural asset class. The gallery educates collectors, introduces emerging black artists, and places them within a canon that has long excluded them. The symbolism of Parish Street deepens that power. Urban renewal and gentrification stripped Black Wall Street of its economic dominance. By opening Ella West Gallery there, Shropshire reclaims space with intention. She replaces erasure with authorship and commerce with culture. Her gallery is not loud, it is deliberate. The walls speak softly, but the implications are enormous. Each exhibition asserts that black creativity deserves preservation, investment, and permanence. This is how value is stabilized. Laida Shropshire represents a modern evolution of black wealth in Durham. She does not merely store money. She moves it into objects that outlast market cycles. Paintings become portfolios. Exhibitions become equity. Her influence reaches beyond collectors. Artists gain access to serious buyers. Durham gains cultural prestige. Black Wall Street gains a new language of ownership, one built not on fear of loss, but confidence in value. In this way, Laida Shropshire becomes one of Durham's richest women without chasing scale. Her wealth is precision-based. She chooses what endures. That discretion is power. She proves that ownership is not limited to land or corporations. It can live on canvas. It can hang on walls. It can quietly redefine who gets remembered. Through Ella West Gallery, Shropshire also trains collectors to think generationally. She encourages acquisition not as impulse, but stewardship. Art is framed as inheritance, not indulgence. This mindset challenges long-held assumptions about black spending and preservation, replacing scarcity thinking with strategy. But as formidable as cultural wealth may be, it still cannot rival the woman who owned the streets themselves by proving that power does not require a bank account on Parish Street. 1. Atwater. In Durham, few figures embody the power of community like Anne Atwater. She was not wealthy in dollars or property, but her influence stretched across neighborhoods, schools, and city halls in ways that money alone could never achieve. Atwater's influence was majorly in mobilization, her ability to organize people, enforce accountability, and compel institutions to act. Her genius lay in understanding that when communities are informed and coordinated, they can wield collective power far beyond individual means. At the center of her work was Operation Breakthrough, an initiative supported by the North Carolina Fund that turned grassroots organization into a disciplined engine for social change. Atwater used the funding not for spectacle, but for infrastructure, meetings, training sessions, and informational campaigns that taught tenants to understand their legal rights and coordinate their actions. She transformed frustration into strategy, equipping low-income residents with the knowledge to negotiate with landlords, ensure repairs, and protect their housing. In essence, she taught people how to turn the city's legal and bureaucratic framework into a tool for empowerment. Her mastery of housing codes became legendary. She did not simply protest unsafe living conditions, she instructed tenants on the exact legal steps to withhold rent, document violations, and compel landlords to fulfill their obligations. This approach turned scattered discontent into organized, enforceable demands, ensuring compliance without relying on external intervention. Her skill in navigating these systems made her a formidable force in housing advocacy, demonstrating that legal literacy could multiply the power of ordinary people. Education was another arena where Atwater exercised extraordinary influence. Most famously, she forged an unlikely partnership with C.P. Ellis, the former Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. Their collaboration culminated in the Charrette of 1971, a pivotal effort to integrate Durham schools. Through this initiative, Atwater showed that even entrenched opposition could be transformed into a force for progress. Her ability to convert adversaries into allies illustrated a profound understanding of human psychology, negotiation, and political strategy. She combined patience, persistence, and tactical insight to effect lasting systemic change. Atwater's wealth was amplified by timing, knowledge, and moral authority. She understood municipal processes, funding streams, and the levers of influence available to grassroots organizers. She could halt city decisions, force negotiations, and redirect policy without any formal office or title, proving that power could reside outside conventional structures. Her authority was exercised through coordination, education, and credible threat of collective action. Unlike other powerful black women in Durham who accumulated inherited or financial capital, Atwater built her influence from the ground up. Her social and civic capital enabled her to reshape neighborhoods, integrate schools, and protect tenants' rights. She demonstrated that wealth could be measured in the ability to educate, mobilize, and hold institutions accountable, offering a blueprint for collective empowerment that continues to inspire organizers nationwide. Her work proved that influence does not require traditional markers of success, such as bank accounts or corporate boards, but instead requires vision, knowledge, and the capacity to act decisively. Atwater's legacy is enduring. Her methods created systems of accountability, empowered residents to defend their rights, and reshaped Durham's social and political landscape. She left a city more just and organized, with residents equipped to continue advocating for themselves long after she was gone. Her ability to convert limited financial resources into broad civic influence represents a form of wealth that rivals any conventional fortune. Anne Atwater's life redefines what it means to be rich in Durham. She possessed a form of capital that transcended currency, rooted in moral authority, legal knowledge, and organizational skill. She stopped the city in its tracks when necessary, orchestrated integration, and strengthened communities from the bottom up. Her power was absolute because it resided in the people she mobilized and the systems she understood. And there you have it, 6 richest women in Durham. Which one of these females fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such peeks into the lives of the rich and powerful, take a look at our channel.